Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Elemental Evan Show. Today, I'm joined by, once again, another very special guest. Today, we have the one and only Quinton Alexander. He is a health and fitness coach, a personal trainer. He comes from a background of track and field, dancing. He's got a degree in kinesiology, and he loves to see people succeeding, getting a smile on their face, and doing things that they were never able to do before. This is just an all-around amazing guy in the short time I've even had to talk with him. So welcome to the show as well. He goes by the name Q, so I'll probably refer to him as Q, but welcome to the show, Q.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. So happy to have you on. Was there anything else that I should add in there?
Well, I mean, we might go down the rabbit hole, but it's been interesting before I even got into no, that's a lie. I was going to say before I got into the health and fitness space, I've been very into art. Just kind of like whether it's movement arts or music and things of that nature. So I've been doing that for a while too. So just whether it's, poetry, rap, I was doing a lot of that before I got into the fitness space. And of course, dancing as well, like literally leading up to, right before I started my fitness venture. So yeah. So a lot of different things left and right for sure.
No, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you mentioning that as well. Especially with dance, it's pretty wild because there's so many people that you don't think would be in dance, and they are, like tons of running backs, even people within the MMA field. So it's really wild. There's so much footwork that goes into it, as well as if anyone has ever actually tried like legit dancing, it's freaking hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's super hard. Like not just having rhythm, but like actually doing like some of these dance moves. It takes a lot of strength and flexibility.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm really happy. I'm excited to dig in on that. But before we jump into the episode completely, I'll start off with just the rapid fire questions that I always do with the guests. So to start it off, where are you from?
Born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. Are you missing Las Vegas at all, or do you enjoy it where you're at now?
Not really. Well, so I used to hate Vegas. So just I'm kind of you're telling me about Beaumont. I'm not sure how the city is there, but Vegas itself is kind of like an island in the desert. There really is nothing else around it. Because people say like, oh, if you can tell somebody you're from California, but if you tell somebody from Nevada, it's like, well, there's only one. Okay, I won't say one, but there's like maybe two or three cities, period, that have any amount of people who actually live there. Vegas is the number one city in the entire state. So you're from Vegas, you're not even from Nevada.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is. Do I miss it? Not necessarily. I just got back Thanksgiving, so saw most of my family still lives there. And I appreciate it more now, actually living in California from an adult perspective. As a kid, you're like, oh, I just want to travel. I want to do all these different things. And I didn't do much of that when I was younger. But going back, even just from like looking at rent and things like parking, stuff you overlook as a kid and you take advantage of, or you take for granted. There's, a lot of different things that I'm more appreciative now.
Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. And then obviously we kind of gave it away, but where are you based out of?
Oh, I live in LA. I actually live in Inglewood specifically, but I tell people LA if they're not too familiar.
Yeah, honestly, anytime I'm traveling and people, even when I wasn't living in LA and they're like, where are you from? It's like, LA,
LA.
It's just easy. You know what I mean? Okay, awesome. And then last two questions. What's your favorite book?
Wow. I would say that's kind of a cheat answer. I would say the Bible. But if it's not the Bible, I would say, man, that's a great question. There's so many books that have like influenced me over time. Let me come back to that.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, and the Bible is a good one. I'm actually, no one has used that one on my show yet. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. Last one is just, what is your favorite quote?
Favorite quote. It's that quote by Marianne Williamson. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure about you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Incredible. But all right, Q, let's go ahead and jump into the real depth of the topic on today's episode, which is really going to be probably focused around movement, exercise, just essentially using our body for what it was made, and moving in this space. So I would love to just start off with really breaking down how you found your way into your current movement practice, maybe even if you want to talk a little bit about what your current movement practice looks like, but definitely, what brought that interest to you, and what really led you down the path of, chasing this career and making it all, essentially your life goal right there.
Okay, so let me wrap my testimony into kind of like a small little package. So I mentioned I'm from Vegas originally. Before telling you, I know I ran track starting from high school, but before then I was playing football. So during that time, I played football. My dad introduced me. One of my best friends at the time, Sean. This was in 5th grade. He was playing football, and dads are talking. They're like, no, you just get your son out there playing football as well. So eventually I played. First year, I was like MVP, running back, all that good stuff, little kids, whatever. And I took it all the way up until high school. Well, right before high school, middle school, I injured my shoulder, tore my right labrum, and I was introduced to the world of radiology. I didn't know the word existed, but of course, when you have to get x-rays, you do that. So I saw the word radiology and I'm like, wow, all the way already in my mind, I thought, how much do they get paid? And then I told myself, I told my parents, I'm going to be a radiologist, because it was the first thing I kind of knew about in the science world. And then maybe a couple years went by. I still didn't get my shoulder fixed. I just knew it was messed up. Eventually got my shoulder fixed. Then I thought about being a physical therapist. And I was like, but it seems kind of boring. So I was like, all right, maybe not physical therapy. This is maybe my freshman year of high school. From that, I was then introduced to, I was watching a Bowflex commercial. All right. So the Bowflex commercial, there was a dude on there and he was working out. He looked kind of nerdy. He had glasses on, but he had some muscle. And his thing, he said, he was like, hey, I know this product is really good because, I went to school and I studied kinesiology. So I know whatever is, I know it's a good product. And I'm like, oh, I was like, that sounds like a smart word. So I looked that up and found out that it was, study of human movement, exercise, all that good stuff. And from there, then I stuck with that theme, and that took me into college. And between the transition of football, in my freshman year, I was approached by somebody on the track team. They said, hey, I know you play running back, but you should run track. It'll make you run faster, on the football field. And I was like, oh, okay. So I tried that, fell in love with track, ditched football. And then I stuck with that all the way through college. In college, I became a decathlete. Came in as sprints, but they saw, here and there that like, oh, he could do a little bit more. So went through the decathlon, won a few, regional championships here and there. And from that, I kind of paired what I was learning with, just the kines background to, what I was learning on the field. And I kind of really used it a lot because I was injured often throughout my my track career. And I kind of just used that like, well, not only how can I get better in terms of my performance, but how can I like stop dealing with all this plantar fasciitis? And, then that led me down the road of, footwear and like, what strong feet are and, what bunions are and like, how does that, the alignment of our foot, and not necessarily being fasciitis, but more fasciosis because it's not necessarily inflamed. It's just all those different things that took me down a long journey, let's say like a rabbit hole. But it all started, I would say, maybe from football and then leading to all throughout college, so. Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's half the story.
Yeah.
Okay. So from college, it's funny. I was dating a girl at the time. So I went to school out in Orange County, Vanguard University.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did my schooling out there, ran track there. And I was dating a girl at the time who lived out in LA. And, there was a whole thing back and forth. She would travel to see me. I wouldn't travel to see her as much. So when I graduated, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to live with you. We're going to make it happen. Did not happen. A month into it, I was living in downtown. We were going to get a place, something in my spirit. And I was talking to other people who were older and wiser than me. They said, hey, don't move in with your girlfriend at the age of 21. Just doesn't make sense. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. So I said, okay. Told her, I said, we're not moving in. Lo and behold, she took that as her out. And I was like, well, I'm not going back to Vegas. So I made it work, found a church community out here. I got a job working at a place that sold fitness equipment. All right. A place called Active Solutions. They still up in business. They sell functional training equipment. Right. So a lot of different rigs. I started to learn more about different tools, whether it was like, steel clubs, maces, kettlebells, sandbags, all that good stuff. Aerial yoga, TRX, I got my certification, by working with them, like all that good stuff, like all that came through working with that job. And in the meantime, I was rapping, so I was pursuing that, of course, putting stuff on SoundCloud. I got a few songs on Spotify, and just having a good time with it. And the girl that I met, she actually influenced me to, become, a part of this small collective of people who did spoken word, rap, sing, all that kind of stuff. It was called Mic Sessions. And Mic Sessions was held pretty much, I don't know how familiar you are with LA, but it's kind of like in the Baldwin Hills-ish area.
Yep.
So somebody had a crib. They invited a bunch of people. The person who put it on, her name was Layla Steinberg. And she actually was somebody who, used to work alongside Tupac when he was doing his thing. And so she did that space, and just a bunch of different people from, all walks of life would come. They would share their stuff. She would critique them on their stage presence, how they were holding the mic, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it was really cool. It was really influential. It got to a point where I realized that maybe I wasn't doing that for myself. And I was kind of in the back of my mind actually doing it for my old relationship, because she had pushed me in that direction. And so I took my artistic desire to do something, and I took that away from music, and then I started to apply that to dance, because I've always been involved in dancing as well, from elementary school to middle. I've been a dancer all my life, in the midst of also being an athlete and all that stuff. So started dancing more. I was involved with breaking in high school, and so I started to get involved with more popping, house, breaking styles early between like 2018, 2020. So taking the classes, teaching classes, working with kids, all that, all the way up until 2020. So now we're kind of getting to the nitty gritty. I'm still working at this corporate job for functional training, right, where we sell the equipment, but doing all this other stuff on the side. Eventually, places closed down. Everybody's working from home. Of course, it's the pandemic, and, hours are cut in half. But 2020 was probably one of my favorite years. Sounds crazy, but it was like literally one of my favorite years, because I was living in, I wasn't engaged or married at the time, but I had a bunch of roommates. It got up to a point where it was 5 guys in an apartment. And, obviously it's a little rowdy, but we spent a lot of time at the parks. So one of my, first, I would say, real clients, I worked with friends in the past, but it was one of my friends. I didn't charge him anything, but he wanted to lose weight. And he was about maybe like 285. Okay. And, he felt uncomfortable with himself, getting on airplanes, kind of just like walking up steps, all that kind of stuff. He just didn't like how he felt, let alone how he looked, even though he utilized it in his comedy, because he's a comedian. Instagram, he's really famous in that film, but he would utilize it to, I guess, what is it, like self-deprecating humor, about like, oh, I'm this guy, da, 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 da. But in reality, he really wanted to lose that weight. So he started on his own, started going to Culver City steps, like just going up and down. Hey, I made it once. Oh, I made it 2 times now, and, all that kind of stuff. But that's all he knew, which was a fantastic start. And so I just asked him, I said, hey, what else are you doing besides that? And he's like, well, that's it. I just go to the steps and whatever. I'm like, oh, dude, like, you should just, why don't you come to the park with me, like, every other day, and then we'll just do some calisthenics, some movement. We might skip, we might crawl, we might, pull, push, whatever. We'll just have fun at the parks. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. So he joined me. And then one of my other roommates hopped in, and another roommate hopped in. And so I helped him from pretty much March of 2020 till July, when he actually moved out to Texas. He lost 70 pounds, just within that small, frame of time. And then, so what is that? Is that 5 months?
Yeah,
something
somewhere around there. Yeah, sorry,
like
I'm
4 or 5 months. Yeah, so like 4 or 5 months, he lost 70 pounds. I was like, what the heck? And then another friend who was also one of the roommates, he lost about 50-ish, 60 pounds. And then another friend lost like 30 pounds. Still kind of eating trash, like they weren't really, eating the best. My friend who lost the most weight, he was doing dirty keto, where it was just it's just all high fat, high protein stuff.
right.
Um, yeah, and so he did it that way, and I helped some other friends, kind of, lose some weight. And one of the biggest rewarding things was actually not the friend who lost the most weight. It was the one of the other ones. He was interested in mostly being behind the camera in the film industry. He liked the way he looked so much. Now he's actually pursuing being more in front of the camera because subconsciously or even consciously, he thought to himself, like, I'm not worth being seen.
Mm, yeah.
So that in a sense changed the way my mind worked. And I had other friends like help them learn how to do a cartwheel and all that kind of stuff. They'd never been able to do a cartwheel from the age of a kid, and I'm like, a cartwheel? I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. And so just teaching people like little stuff like that. And it's kind of goes back to me saying, like, I love teaching people how to do things that they never in their wildest mind thought they could do. Like if they said, oh, I can't dance, like, I'm sure you may have heard the common phrase like, oh, I'm white, I don't have rhythm, or I don't, something like that. I'm like, dude, first of all, like I'll walk up to them and I'll listen. I'm like, oh, come here real quick. I'll listen to their heart. And I was like, oh no, you got rhythm. Your heart beating, right? They're like, oh, okay, cool. That's the start. So, just kind of getting people to, realize that they're more than they think they are. This has really been beneficial. So from that point, I then took that, like we were talking about before the start. I took that experience, through 2020, and then towards the end of it, I reached out to one of my older contacts through the business that I worked with, for the corporate gym or corporate business, and I started working for them at the district in up in the valley, and then spent about a couple years there, about a year and a half, and then transitioned to the gym that I connected with Caleb. And from now I've moved on into another space with kind of just more independent, a little bit of hybrid, mostly online, but also working with people who really inspire me in person. So that was a lot, but I tried to put that all there.
It's hard to fit a life story into a short amount of time. So no,
Right.
that's excellent, man. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely dive in a lot of those sections of your life, but just overall, I think the real takeaway is just it's always really neat to see how we get to where we're at, and a lot of the times what it seems like is it's usually through, a hardship of some sort, like an injury in sports or not eating right, and having these illnesses or diseases showing up, right? And then kind of using ourselves as the experiment and then going a little bit outside of the normal, which hasn't been obviously helping us, and then finding our way in that field. And so, also with you, like having injured your shoulder, one of the things, and this didn't bring me into necessarily like health and wellness, but like I as well in wrestling, like almost dislocated my shoulder. It like slightly came out of the socket, but wasn't fully out. And I just kind of, no one adjusted it or did anything right on spot. And so when I finally went in and got x-rays taken, they're like, there's nothing we can really do now. It's kind of like already settled back, but they're just like, you're just gonna feel pain. And they're like, just build muscle around your shoulder for later in life, so you can avoid, feeling waking up in the morning and feeling some pain there. So it's just it's super wild, but
it's still messed up.
It doesn't bother me at all now. They do say that it's something down the road that could. So trying to really just focus on, joint health as well as, maintaining muscle around the shoulders and really focusing on keeping that muscle built and functioning properly and keeping some range of movement in there as well.
So is it, do you have, basically, are your ligaments looser at this point? So what is the issue?
So actually, I have no idea, honestly. So in high school, they just took an x-ray. They're like, oh yeah, like they, show me this little dark line where my joint is. And they're like,
Yeah,
okay, it shouldn't be there. It should be more like sunken into the socket, I guess.
sure.
And at that age, I had no idea what questions to ask. And so I don't even think they really told me what the real
Mm-hmm.
issue is. They were just like,
Yeah,
it'll eventually go back into place and do what it needs to do, but you will always have, probably some pain down the road. And knock on wood, I don't have any pain right now in my shoulder, which is excellent.
yeah.
But it's something that I definitely try to be, very cautious with and do preemptive measures to take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and if ever you
I'm
have any
curious.
advice on, yeah, no, dude, I mean, I
Yeah,
would be happy to take any advice you have, because I know, like in terms of what your kind of workout looks like right now, like movement practices,
yeah,
what do you normally do? Do you do a traditional style like lifts, like deadlifting, bench press, squat, things like that, or are you
yeah.
doing more of like an animal flow, or are you incorporating all of them? Like, what's kind of your movement practice look like?
Man, there's seasons. There's seasons
Yeah.
of different styles. So right now I'm actually in more of a traditional style, because I neglected that a lot through my upbringing. So originally my background was that, just classic like deadlift, bench press, whatever, from high school with football, right?
Mhm.
So I didn't realize until after, I got to college and then everything after that I actually had a really good strength and conditioning coach in high school.
That's
I
awesome.
didn't know that he was good because I hadn't had nothing to compare it to, but I was like, I look back, I'm like, wow, he actually knew his stuff. So but yeah, so I kind of have that background between, going through, more of the dancing phase. And I didn't tell you that. Yeah, I said dance. There's a lot of stuff. So picked up a lot of tricking and tumbling as well. So I learned how to back tuck in high school, hanging out with the cheerleaders.
Wait, what's tricking? I know tumbling, but what's tricking?
So tricking is like a mixture between gymnastics and parkour.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so if you ever see people do like one-legged like flips and spins and tucks and curls and stuff, like they'll do like gainers. You know what a gainer is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like going like they'll basically do like obviously gainers on the ground, but like multiple in the air, and they'll like do like 360, 720 spins, land on one leg, put one hand on the ground. They just look like ninjas and stuff.
Sick. Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's what the term people use for tricking,
Okay.
right? They're doing literally flipping tricks.
Okay.
So I kind of got into that realm a little bit, and just learning how to tumble on my own. And so I would say maybe more so the gymnastics, because I didn't get too much into the style of tricking so much, but my combination of dancing and like breaking and then learning how to like it just kind of all went together. So where was I going with that? You're asking, oh, how is it what phase am I in right now?
Right,
I,
right.
I did a lot of that right before, actually right around the time that I started to introduce my friends and help them lose weight. I was in that mode where I was doing more primal movements. I was crawling, I was flipping, I was learning how to do back tucks and aerials and things of that nature. Everything was more body weight, calisthenics based. And from that experience, I actually had the opportunity to then start working with more athletes. And of course, you can take a lot of those elements, but there's a natural reality that when you're in a gym, you've got all of these equipment and tools around you. Use the tools because they're there for a reason. And so I didn't have a lot of experience with that. Even though I had my background in kines and I was training people more from the calisthenics space, that was actually a learning curve for me getting into that space early in like 2021.
Mm.
So literally last year. so yeah, so then I started to get more into more of the functional training, actually applying it, versus, when I was working with the company, just selling the stuff. I used them, but I wasn't, I didn't have the physical experience, with that. And so just applying those different things, whether it's working with landmines and different bands and, pressurized cable machines or, jammers and, slant boards and BOSUs and, all that kind of stuff was so new to me in terms of like, how do I apply this to help somebody get better?
Mm.
So I did that for about a year or so, and crazy enough, because I was going balls to the wall and I wasn't, really thinking intentionally about it. I injured myself.
Hmm.
And so I didn't mention that. So I told you about my shoulder injury, but something I've been overcoming for the last year and a half is knee injuries on both knees. And it not necessarily, they weren't injured from a structural, issue. I had realized that a lot of it was just like tightness that were, pulling on the joint. And, I thought like, oh man, I need to get x-rays here. I need to do this. I need to do that. When lo and behold, they were just weak and tight.
Mm.
Like, and I was flexible, but the right muscles, like a few fibers that were, in the whole bundle were just messing up, just a few weak links, killing my knees. And so from that, it actually has been, in a sense, a journey of, being a coach who's, getting other people, healthier, happier, losing weight, but also trying to fix myself. I basically was Dr. House, who literally couldn't fix his own leg, but is like solving everybody else's, medical issues. So it wasn't up until probably like 2 months ago that I actually stopped having knee pain.
Wow.
But now I'm just in a classic strength program where I'm just getting strong for strong's sake, the basics, uh, you know, pushing 3 plates, for bench, squatting 4 plates for squats, deadlift 5, just like those basic athletic numbers. Um, Honestly, to be completely honest, they're ego lifts. They really don't transfer as much, but I wasn't as strong, in terms of like my squatting capabilities, which is kind of some of the reasons why I ended up injuring my knees. Because if I was that strong, I, you're only strong if you only get injured, when you're put in a position that you're not prepared for,
Right. Right.
AKA your ankle is not strong in that position, which is why when enough force hits it, there's an injury, or, you strain something only because the muscle was stretched to a capacity that it couldn't, handle that load, you know, at
Yeah.
whatever rate that it was working at. So, yeah. So for that reason, I'm like, oh, you know what? I've been flexible. I've been, fast and quick and powerful and agile, but I haven't really been strong.
Mm.
I get strong. So I'm in a season of strong. That's a
Beautiful.
long explanation, but I had to give that right there.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, definitely, I think that every form of movement has its purpose, right? Even the ego lifts, right? Like
Yeah.
they serve a function, and so I
Right.
think it's really depending on like you said, the season that you're in. And so that kind of leads me to a few questions I have for you for our listeners. So
Yeah.
one of the first ones would be, for a person who, let's say, maybe used to lift back in the day or doesn't have any experience with lifting and being in a gym, but they want to start going down that path, where
Mhm.
would you kind of point them in terms of, style of exercises to do, even like classes to attend or even to do at home?
Yeah.
Like what style of movement would you recommend to a person like that?
It's always the foundations. I would say like, I guess, what is their experience? Like, were they an athlete before? Were they never, exposed to any type of fitness? If they're starting from like square one, maybe they were an artist all their life, or they're an architect and they kind of work a desk job and they're like, dude, I've never been to a gym. I've seen it on TV. I know what Taibo is, but I've I've never downloaded or paid for P90X. Where should I start? There's some basic, programs, but I would say basic things like learning how to squat, learning how to
Yeah.
do a push up, learning how to lunge. If they can get down those movements of learning how to, maximize their own body weight before trying to pick up any other weight is the best route, in my opinion. Because at the end of the day, when there's nothing to pick up, you have to pick up yourself. And so I always say,
Mhm.
like, hey, if you can't, before you start picking up, anything or anybody else, from a philosophical standpoint, you must first lift up yourself, right? You must first, master yourself and your own body weight before you can actually, pour out of that fullness of the cup thereof, and then, give to somebody else. So
I
that's,
like, I like
yeah,
that. No, that's excellent. And yeah, I like it really does work both ways, philosophically and physically, right?
yeah,
That's beautiful. Yeah, and I 100% agree. I think just your own body weight can be surprisingly heavy at times.
yeah,
Just do enough reps. And so yeah, I really enjoyed that answer. In terms of, now let's say a person who is more used to like weightlifting, or even like they already have
Yeah.
a movement practice, what kind of workouts or movement practice should they adopt in terms of longevity and really preserving like joints and, muscle
Yeah.
for daily stuff, right? Not necessarily like lifting crazy heavy things, but let's say being able to go out for a run, hang out with your
Yeah.
grandkids, lift them up or whatever it may be. What would
Oh,
you kind of promote for that?
okay. That's a great question because now we're moving into that space. So I would say full range of motion is best for most people in terms of longevity. Like if you're looking at, building muscle and, from a bodybuilder standpoint, there's different ways where you can do partial range, and trying to hit certain things and working on different angles. That stuff is cool, but most people aren't going to do that day in and day out. I would say take anywhere between, moderate intensity in terms of how much you can lift, and then take that through full range of motion,
Mm.
especially when it comes to whether it's the ankles, the knees, the hips, like learning how the joint moves and then just taking it there. So whether it's a full squat, go really light on whatever that is, and then just learn how to rep that out, because in daily life you're going to have to squat down and get a little bit lower to pick something up off the ground, learning how to hinge properly with very light weight. And so just different things like that. So it's kind of taking it back to whatever the fundamentals are. If they actually have a little bit of experience of lifting and things of that nature and what they want to do for longevity, full range is probably the best thing you're going to do, because no matter what position you're in, you're strong. There's a lot of funky Mickey Mouse stuff we can figure out. We can do a flamingo RDL and pull over the head. Like that stuff's cool, but there are some basic things that you can do that have tremendous effects for the long term. Hopping on top of that, one thing I preach outside of anything when it comes to not only just from a strength standpoint, I don't think people spend enough time on the ground. So like sitting on the ground, people ask like, oh, I've never been flexible. Just tell, whether it's my clients or people I come into contact with, I say, well, how often do you sit on the ground? They're like, look at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, whoa, I mean, do you ever actually spend time, like, do you have carpet at home? Do you spend time sitting on the carpet? They're like, no, I just sit on the couch. And it's like, well, your body's in a fixed 90-degree angle, like at all times. So how do you expect, to be flexible if in your resting position is in a fixed position, right? So
Dang.
when you sit on the ground, that's my gospel, right? So when you sit on the ground more often than not, you actually don't stay in the same position, right? So naturally your legs might be, splayed out, and then all of a sudden you'll kind of like lean over here and then lean back and then do this. And in the process of actually getting up off the ground, you have to then stretch just to get up. People are like, oh, I have bad hips or, a back. It's like, dude, if you actually spent time on the ground, which I say is, God's first chair, or, the first seat we ever had, you're going to be, just like a child is. We look at babies and, oh my God, he's so flexible. He puts his head over his head. It's like, well, he's not sitting in little baby chairs and stuff. Like he's actually maneuvering and crawling. And so honestly, it's philosophically, but also physically lowering ourselves, humbling ourselves, not thinking that because the ground is beneath us, that it's actually beneath us, So like actually spending more time on the ground that would probably be number one that I would tell people to do in terms of like what they should incorporate into their daily lifestyle. And then on top of that, if they go into the gym, spend more time working on full range of motion, not that, short stuff, like actually like, if you can't pull it all the way here and then push it all the way back, it might be too heavy for you, or at least for
Yeah.
what you're trying to accomplish, so just like working through that basic stuff, that's going to, have tremendous return for your joints and your health overall.
I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So, in terms of someone who is going for longevity, I absolutely agree. Full range of motion, really utilizing the joint muscles and putting them into the places where if you needed to reach behind you in a car, or if you had it, like you would be
Yes.
able to do that. And like you said, also strengthening the muscles for any occasion, right? Like if your ankle isn't used to having weight on it while it's in this position, that's
Yeah.
where you would get injured, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely agree with everything you said there. And then spending time on the floor is incredible. Being that I'm pretty deep into yoga, that's something that, now I do quite a bit. And,
Yeah.
I will sit on the floor cross-legged. And this is something I used to never do ever. Definitely my fiance got me into it more with yoga. And then also just, yeah, moving the body more and yeah, being comfortable getting down on the floor, doing some stretching, sitting
Yeah.
in a cross-legged pose, because it's so wild. As a kid, everyone can sit in a cross-legged pose, right? And
Yeah.
then you get older and you go to sit down, you're like, oh my gosh, like my knees are way up here. I can't, like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna fall back. Like, it's so wild. So
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And that's one of my big things is usually longevity. I like functionality, right? Which is why I really like these new movement practices like animal flow and just all these functional tools that are coming out. I think they're
Right.
incredible. So if you, I don't know if you had any more on that, but I do have at least one more question in terms of your advice.
Okay. I mean, look, I can talk for whatever. Like we can just, roll with it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Got you, man. Well, then the next question is definitely going to be, and this is a super common one, but for people who are looking to lose weight, I have my own kind of protocol that I usually say. But if you
Yeah.
have a specific view on this or something, even with your friend who over, that 5 month period really dropped a bunch of weight, what were some
Sure.
of the main tactics that you were using and do use to this day to help people take off weight and also keep it off?
So I do come from a very traditional background. I know some people, might talk against it, but move often, move daily. A lot of people really overlook it, and it could be this, like I said, everything is everything, right? In
Mhm.
terms of whether it's philosophical for the body or for the mind or for finance, like it all connects. People don't do the thing enough, and it is what it is. Like before we had cars, before we we had airplanes, and people actually had to do something in order to actually get it done. So now we have technology, we have whether it's a bicycle, there are different, things that we've invented to make life easier. But, energy is it, it cannot be created nor destroyed by us, but it can only be transferred. So we transferred all of our energy for somebody else to do it. And then now we actually are just holding on to it. So I could tell people to, hey, you know what, make sure you're, intermittent fasting or, getting more sunlight or, and how it, relates to your hormones. Like all that stuff is cool. But if you're just sitting at home, like you can biohack as much as you want, but people used to like move for 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
As human beings, we just don't move enough, So there's a lot of high level conversations, which I'm sure a lot of people may talk about on the show and, different ways to combat that. But I would say if people can just start, walking more and then actually doing something that, makes them sweat and breathe hard. I know that's very general, but the only way fat really burns, leaves the body through, through oxidation is it turns it either into water or carbon dioxide. So you might sweat, you might, you might urinate, you have to breathe. If you're not breathing and sweating, that state of matter will not leave the body,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
So you have to do something that's going to make you sweat and breathe hard.
Yeah, I like that. And because people don't know that a lot of breakdown of fat does leave through the breath.
Yeah. Most of it actually
Yes.
leaves through the breath. So just even thinking about that, if I would tell somebody, like, hey, just understanding science as we know it, we might talk about ether and all that kind of stuff. But three states of matter. You've got solid, liquid, and gas. And so the solid, in a sense, maybe you might be thinking about the fat is the solid. Well, in order for it to leave the body, it has to change states of matter into either liquid or gas. That's either sweating or breathing. So if you can sweat a lot and find something that's going to make you breathe a lot from an active standpoint, that's something that you can do to help you, lose a lot of weight. Now, of course, there's the other side of, different things that you can do. Now you can start talking about, oh, what are we eating? Or, how much muscle are we putting on the body? What's your, your resting, metabolic rate and things that are going to require your body just to either live or function, it needs more energy to do that thing. And then thus you actually start burning more calories because you have more machinery on you. We can go down that path as well. But I would say just simply because a lot of people get caught up into like the very specifics and in and outs, and they just don't move enough. They're not willing to challenge themselves enough to move often, throughout the day, and do something that's going to make them sweat or breathe hard because they don't want to be uncomfortable. And so actually just doing things that make you uncomfortable consistently over time, that applies to finance and business and all that kind of stuff, you're going to see success in the right path. So
yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you anymore. Going back to, for example, the walking.
Yeah.
Our body obviously was designed to move within this space that is our world, right? I mean, literally, we have these limbs that allow us to stand up and then two other limbs to grab things and move. And it's literally our body is designed to literally move. So when people are, at home all day sitting in a chair, which I've been doing most of today, but I'll be taking a walk right after this, is just getting outside and doing, I like to try to do 3 10-minute walks each day at a minimum, right?
Nice.
Yeah, I'll try to pair it with my meals if I can. But totaling 30 minutes total of walking. It's super simple, but can really make a huge difference. And I think people a lot of times they let great be the enemy of good, right? They're like they try and do everything. They're trying to get the diet and this. It's very simple. Just go move, like you said. And yeah, because truly the body is absolutely designed to do this. And we're eating food that we've never had before, or at least in amounts, right? And then we're moving a fraction of what we used to. So even from just the most basic of perspectives, it's like, look, you're just eating more than anyone ever has, and you're moving way less than anyone ever has. So we have to balance that. And I think keeping it simple is literally the best thing. I always tell people the best workout you can do is the one that you're going to do, right? Because if you're wanting to, you're trying to go to the gym and lift all these weights, but you have to like will yourself to go do it every single time. Chances are one of those days you're going to say, oh, I'm too tired. Whereas a simple 10-minute walk is like, okay, we'll just go do a walk around the block. It's not that long.
I mean, like if you had to, I'm sure you would walk to your car.
Right. Yeah.
You would walk through the grocery store, out of necessity, there are things that we have to do in life. And I think if we're talking on the level of like, hey, what's this Olympic level athlete need to do to like, move the needle this much? Oh, okay. All right. Let's bring in all this extra detail. But for most people who already aren't at that level where they need that extra push, they just need to move more. And then of course, when in terms of eating, how we get our nutrition, obviously there's sunlight that plays a huge role into how our bodies interact with how we digest. But staying away from processed foods, people have been eating bread for millennia, so I'm not going to get on that. But there are different types, of things that we eat that can just be a little cleaner, a little bit more whole. Like, dude, just eat fruits, veggies, meat. Maybe some nuts and stuff like that.
Yeah. I know. And also on the whole bread topic, I agree with you. Like, I think we can go down the rabbit hole of it, but at the real core of it is, if you look at traditional bread, it pretty much had 3 ingredients: water, flour, and salt. And those were like the 3 things that they had. So if you look at a traditional sourdough bread, you can literally make the starter by putting flour and water in equal parts together. And then you allow natural yeast from the air to get in there and create the starter to start rising, right? And then you add that starter to literally water, flour, and salt. You mix it, you let it rest. You obviously knead it or whatever, and then you put it in the oven, and that's it. It's 3 ingredients. But if you go look at a sourdough bread at your average store, it's going to have like 10 different ingredients in it. So even from
educating me there, I didn't know that. Just even looking at that.
Yeah. And another thing too is like a lot of breads will have sugars in them, which is not absolutely necessary. I mean, depending on the style of bread you're going for, but I look at sourdough as one of the oldest style of breads. It's very simple to make. You don't even need to go find, create yeast. Like, the yeast is naturally in the air and will get in there. So yeah, it's one of the oldest style breads, and it's literally 3 ingredients. So when I see bread at the supermarket and it's like 10, 15 ingredients in there, I'm just like, this is not, this isn't bread anymore. This is like preservative and added flavor like that. To me, that's what that resembles, so anytime I see bread that has at least, okay, 4 ingredients, maybe, okay, 5, but anything over that, I'm like, no, that's a no-go.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. But all right, Q, honestly, dude, I mean, we're gonna stay in touch. We're gonna talk more for sure, but in terms of this episode, we'll try to wrap it up here now, because try to keep the listeners, on a shorter episode. But
Sure.
I do want to provide a moment here for you to share any last minute thoughts if you have any. I definitely want you to share where people can reach you, where people can, find any kind of product that you have or any classes that you have. I know you're an incredible trainer. Caleb Wood, who put us in touch and is also a previous guest on the show, speaks super highly of you. So I know you have some incredible stuff, and I would love to have you share it in this segment.
Sure. Man, lasting words. I think sometimes, like I've said, I've kind of been on that tangent a little bit in the show, but a lot of it has to do with like who we are as human beings. It really just comes out, in the physical, whether it's, the stuff that we're eating, the stuff that we're doing. But I think as long as people are pursuing, who, in my opinion, my belief, God created them to be, and that is the healthiest version of themselves, they're going to find it. Seek and you shall find. So if they don't know where to look, just start looking, period. If they don't know what to do, just start, because eventually I wouldn't know you if it wasn't through Caleb, and then you're talking about introducing me to another person, and I would have never got to whoever your friend is if I just didn't speak to one person. So whatever that is, like, if you really don't know what to do, just start something. And somebody else who is already on the path, they're going to say, hey, have you thought about doing this? Or if you're researching, how to do this, you're going to have a suggestion, so just start. Like, that is probably the easiest thing to say. And they're going to find success as long as they just stay consistent. When you're a baby, you don't know what to do until somebody shows you. You don't know how to speak until you hear your first word. So it's all the same stuff. Just start. But yeah, as I said before, man, I'm a personal trainer. I just love, I love seeing people smile. I love, helping people. Right now, that is in the phase of health and fitness. And I think, people can definitely benefit from improving, how they move, how they eat, and how they think. But yeah, my name is Quinton Alexander. I have a business, Q Flex Moves. You can follow me on pretty much every platform as Q Flex Moves. So that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I don't really use Twitter, but if you wanted to follow me on Twitter, you can do that. It's Q Flex Moves. YouTube, Q Flex Moves. The letter Q, Flex, and then
Yes,
moves. So, you can follow me on all platforms. And yeah, if you guys are looking for coaching, any type of guidance and accountability, I got you.
I love it, Q. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, from just a little bit that I've seen, and I definitely hope to experience in terms of doing some workout sessions with you. I know you know your stuff really well, and you're a living example of it. So I appreciate you bringing all that knowledge here on the show today, and just enlightening everybody and sharing the amazing presence that you have on this show. So I really appreciate that, Q.
Evan, I thank you for for inviting me. I appreciate it. This is actually my first podcast ever.
Hey, all right. Yeah. Well, don't forget me when you get big, man.
No. Well, we will remember each other because you're going to be big as well.
Thank you, my man. Yeah, that's the goal here. But thank you very much for coming on the show, man. Honestly, like I said, I know we're going to be in touch, and maybe even have you back on the show in the future. And yeah, definitely, everyone check this guy out. I will have all of his information linked in the show notes. You'll be able to click on there to be redirected to whatever site it is that you're trying to find. And you guys already know the motto of the show. It's do everything with good intentions and connect to your elements. Everybody have a great one. Peace.
Peace.